Let's take a look at all the other pretty cheat codes that I didn't find in Portal RTX last time. Look, here's one just underneath the radio. This one scans as Black Mesa, being the rival company to Aperture Science in the Half-Life universe. In a later slideshow, we see that they're competing for Department of Defense and government-wide contracts, both seemingly with disastrous results. Anyway, using the cheat code Black Mesa activates a skin called ISO Black Mesa. This puts a jacket over the cube, featuring the Aperture Science logo, so not the Black Mesa one, and the background is this stitched orange pattern, which as far as I can see has no relation to Black Mesa in the slightest, other than to be orange in colour. I'm sure people in the comment section will enthusiastically explain this to me because I don't get it. Here, have a nice clip of this cube obstructing a light source. And now let's move on. Before leaving this first room, check out this camera. Yes, it has a QR code on its back, but I already covered that one in my first video. What I want to point out is its shadows. It's got two of them, from two different light sources. Now I think there's something already beautiful about the seeming simplicity of this, although the rendering challenge is anything but. Multiple shadows will quickly overwhelm conventional lighting methods, especially with the task of drawing 5, 10 or 100 shadows on everything. But ray tracing, although already very demanding, doesn't really care how many lights you've got. In fact, in some ways, more lights is easier, since the result gets less grainy. For this example, I'm using a cheating console command called Fire Energy Ball, which launches bright spheres across the level. It's a really cool way of lighting things up, but to best showcase it, we need a darker map. Here's one from Half-Life 2. You probably don't recognise it just yet, but you will, because it's the best one. And to light it, I'll be using those beautiful, bouncy, deadly balls. How deadly, you ask? And this is the ideal place to showcase it. There are no pre-lit lights, there's lots of debris strewn about, and plenty of space and dark corners to allow for the ray tracing to stretch its legs. Now I kind of like it when there's just one light bouncing about. Notice how the environment takes on the colour of whatever's currently being lit up by the ball. But why limit it to just one of these terrifying things? I haven't seen anything this realistic since 3D Mark 2001. The future is here, people, and it looks strangely like I imagined it would in 2003. Beautiful. Let's take a break from all this excitement to stare at this milk carton, which contains another QR code. This happened to be the second hardest QR code to scan, but I eventually managed it by dangling the milk carton between two cubes like this. And this code reads, "The more you buy, the more you save," which is a reference back to GDC 2018, where Jensen said,
"The more you buy, the more you save."
Quite a few times.
That's right.
Using this code turns the companion cubes to ceramic. Why? Maybe you pour the milk in your tea. Ew. Don't get me wrong, it still looks nice, but I still feel this one was a bit of a missed opportunity to not have a far more reflective or materially interesting cube. But I guess anyone who's ever wanted to be friends with a glorified teacup can rejoice. Did you know that you can disable the new models and materials and use the old ones instead, but still lit with ray tracing? No matter how you go about it though, it's impossible to create a comparable before and after shot. For instance, here's a portal button lit with real life so you can see for yourself which does it best. What's that? The materials are different, so they're impossible to compare? You're goddamn right. Anyway, these comparisons in real life proved to be a mistake because I then got sidetracked with real life ray tracing until the sun went down. Of particular interest to me was this example at the very end of the day, where I trapped a portal button model between two doors and then opened and closed them to watch the bounced lighting illuminate its surroundings and then to darken them again. If I saw this happening in a game, then I'd swear it was doing it wrong. But this isn't a game, I don't think. This is real life. I mean, just because there's a portal model here and scrollings from a previous test subject here doesn't mean anything. Valve, please fix. This code inside the Incinerator proved to be the most difficult one to read. I saw many comments saying that they found this one but couldn't get in a position where they could view it, and I can see why. This whole thing appears blurred, and once you get close enough to finally see it, you die. Now, I think that using cheats is a valid way to use cheats in this game, and doing so I was able to scan this one as reading direct illumination, which is conveniently the thing that stopped most people from scanning this one in the first place. But don't worry, you're only missing out on a digital skull design, which looks to be a close relative of the digital companion cube that I covered in the last video. Hidden within the projector slides is this QR code, which scans as delicious and moist, which is referencing your mum, or possibly this cake from Portal. But the skin it unlocks is dark hardwood, coated in rubber and surrounded on all sides by garish pulsating love hearts. maybe it is referencing your mum after all. It's definitely very different from the other cubes we've seen so far. I'd imagine this cube in a Deus Ex-y universe. One interesting question I was asked was, do these lens cubes I showed in the last video actually concentrate the light like a magnifying glass would? Absolutely fascinating, I thought, and I set out to test it. And the answer is no. Underneath the keyboards in Portal are two amusing things. The first is this warning about the keyboard becoming explosive if flipped, and the second is this QR code saying Coraline. Thank goodness I finally saw that movie the other week, because everything since then seems to have been a reference to that movie in one way or another. This cat keeps appearing and disappearing into various cupboards and crevices around my house, and I've had this ever-growing desire to sew buttons onto everything. I think this being found on a keyboard references the dad in the movie who's always typing away on his keyboard. And the resulting pillow cubes this code unlocks seems to hint at the dreamlike world that Coraline visits at night. I really like this design, being one of the few to deviate from the cube's shape of being a cube, and the various details and textures, although not reflective, are some of the few in this game grounded in reality, which I think can sometimes complement the accurate ray tracing lighting better than crazy neon pulsating love hearts do. It's only fitting that I fired up Half-Life 2 with RTX, and to accompany button-eyed Alex with these Coraline-based cubes. This was also a great chance to light these cubes in a more lifelike way. Just a shame they're still clearly made of metal. Alex didn't seem to mind though. What a wonderful reference to an iconic movie, homage to one that combines modern techniques to push the boundaries of what would otherwise be yesterday's effects. And now, just like Pillow Coraline did in the movies, this Pillow Companion Cube can now follow you on your journeys, aiding you through troubled times and spying on you when you least expect it. They even went to the trouble of spelling Coraline Caroline, again referencing the way in which characters in the movie don't pay full attention to the protagonist, just like how, if you don't pay full attention to your surroundings in Portal, then you wouldn't have discovered this little Easter egg. Such wonderful attention to detail that blurs the boundaries of artistic mediums. It's enough to make even Portal 2's Caroline character proud. And now onto the last three codes, all of which have something in common. Under the non-orange chair is this QR code, scanning as Cave Johnson, who is a guy first mentioned in Portal but whose existence only really gets fleshed out come Portal 2. This code unlocks ISO Wheatley, which is sort of not a reference to Cave Johnson in the slightest, and using this code activates this design, which rather aptly is sort of not really a reference to Wheatley either, but it still looks kind of cool, comprising of interesting shapes and lights and stuff, and it does at least suit its metallic sound effects. Now this got me thinking, how accurate can the ray trace lighting be? Yes, these metallic grills are very impressive, but what if we go even smaller still? So I crawled inside the open computer and wedged myself between PCIe slots to really admire how ray tracing scales all the way from the very big to the very small. I mean, it's all the same to the ray tracing, which cares primarily about how many pixels your screen has, rather than how physically big the things it's got to light are. But it's still impressive to zoom in this far and for the ray traced direct and indirect lighting to still make things look convincingly warm and glowy. Speaking of which, under the orange chair is this QR code, which scans as physically based. Because you're physically based on one right now. Or possibly a toilet, I'm not one to judge. But this code activates a very special cube indeed, being the ice one. This is literally the best unlock ever, since the ice refracts all the lighting coming through it in funky ways and contains inside itself a bunch of ivy, which would be more Portal 2-esque, and a rock, which at first I thought was a reference to Aperture Desk Job, but on second thoughts, it just looks like a rock. And these things inside the ice cast delicate shadows across the ground. What I am a bit disappointed to see, or rather not to see, is the shadows of the ice itself. It doesn't even get very faint ones. What a shame. But you know what I've got to do with this one now, don't you? This. Fire and ice. Still a better conclusion than Game of Thrones had. But this isn't the end of the video, for there's one QR code left, which as far as I can see, nobody online has managed to find inside Portal RTX. On this forum post, somebody known only as Bakoha had ripped all of the QR codes out of the game, and the QR code was titled Furniture Stool. So I went browsing about the many observation rooms in Portal until I stumbled across this, featuring not one but two stools. And sure enough, the QR code beneath them read Jensen, which unlocked a golden covering for these cubes. Now, Jensen is the CEO of Nvidia, which is a company that just happens to be ever so slightly involved in the making of Portal RTX. So it's got to be referencing him, hasn't it? But he always wears a black leather jacket, presumably because
The more you buy, the more you save.
and a black leather jacket this most certainly is not. So I'm going to risk it all by saying that this is instead referring to Adam Jensen from Deus Ex, who comes from a future where everybody loves wearing fancy black and gold style jackets. But the fact that it's this vague makes this a rubbish unlock as well. I never asked for this. One of the prettiest things I saw in Portal RTX didn't require any of these cheat codes at all. It involved simply stacking the standard cubes in front of a red light source until it was all but obscured, plunging the rest of the room into blue, with really nice looking shades of purple where the different light sources merged together. I mean, this has nothing to do with cheating in Portal, I just wanted to show you this because I thought it was pretty.
Back in my day, graphics was something to be celebrated. When Crysis came out, people who could run it, ran it and enjoyed it. Those who couldn't, looked forward to getting the next computer upgrade that would allow them to. And those who didn't care about it, didn't talk about it. They didn't jump on the forums and bitch or moan about how rubbish it was or how everyone who likes it is a supposed shill. Fast forward to today and we have Portal RTX and it seems like everyone is trying to find a reason to hate it. I don't hate it. I like Portal and I like technology. So something that combines the two, in my opinion, is something to be celebrated, especially as a free mod. Sure, most people won't be able to run it that quickly right now. In a few years' time, the situation will be different. Oh my god! And I don't think I have to be an Nvidia shill to say that. So on that note, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, cake is a lie.